I'm Matt McClure, and this is Currents. After some controversial votes in Congress on the DREAM Act and Don't Ask, Don't Tell, does the church still have a voice in the public square? The tablet helps make Christmas bright for local families.
There are really families, who aren't going to get anything this Christmas unless we reach out and help them.
And caroling for a new generation as a local school brings glee to the season.
It's a glee club because it has glee and you're happy.
Well, good evening. Thanks so much for joining us. Well, this past weekend, two big initiatives in Washington met with two very different outcomes, and both were issues on which the Catholic Church had taken a strong stand. One was the bill repealing Don't Ask, Don't Tell and allowing homosexuals to serve openly in the military. The church opposed that move, but the bill passed anyway. It's expected to be signed into law this week. The other was the DREAM Act, which would have provided a path to citizenship for some children of undocumented immigrants. The church had supported that law, but it failed. Now, all of this raises the question of just how much influence the church is able to have over public policy in this country. For some perspective on that, I'm joined tonight by someone who deals with that question every single day. He's Brooklyn's Vicar for Government Affairs and Public Policy, Monsignor Kieran Harrington. Monsignor, thanks so much for being here.
Good to be with you, Matt.
Appreciate your time today. Of course, we're talking about Don't Ask, Don't Tell, the DREAM Act here. As I've said, the church kind of hasn't seen what they would prefer happen. Why is that, you think?
Well, I think that it started with the DREAM Act. I think that the fact is that that piece of legislation is pretty controversial, especially in the 5 regions of the country or the 4 regions of the country where the 5 Democratic senators oppose the legislation. And so whether you look in the South and certainly in the Midwest, there would be real incentive for those incumbent Democratic senators to oppose the legislation. And so my sense is that the real calculation that went into this is that while the Democratic Party in general was supportive of this legislation, in the particular circumstances that these legislators found themselves, they were going to be unwilling to support that legislation.
Right, and it fell exactly 5 votes short of reaching that threshold of 60 votes the supermajority needed to move it forward.
That's right.
So, I mean, is that kind of frustrating for the church and their step? Because obviously this is something that Catholic leaders, the U.S. Bishops' Conference, and had really pushed for.
Right. I mean, the important piece of this legislation is to recognize that there are a lot of young people who didn't make the decision themselves to come here, but their parents brought them here as children. And so, they came over into the United States or flew into the United States, however they arrived here, when they were children, and they went to school here and grew up here. And as soon as they are ready to graduate college, the big question they're faced with is, well, how do I make my life here as an undocumented person? And it is a real challenge for young people because, for all practical purposes, they're American. Their parents may be from some other country, but they're American.
Yeah, I mean, they say a lot of times people say, well, just send them back home. Well, home is here for these kids. I mean, these are kids who a lot of times came in even as infants and are now trying to make a life for themselves, as you said. We actually talked to someone on the show yesterday who would have benefited from the DREAM Act, and it was just, I think, very very sad to see her story now and how she's just kind of in limbo, like, what do I do? And she's about to graduate college.
And that story is legion throughout the diocese. I mean, in our diocese, particularly in Brooklyn and Queens, where so many families of immigrants have settled, legal and undocumented, that story is repeated over and over. But in my own parish, there are a number of people who find themselves in that circumstance, and it is really a great tragedy because you can kick the can down the road so far, and then ultimately you're faced with this question: is how do we, how do we solve this problem?
Right. Well, moving on now to Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Much the same thing. The church had advocated for that repeal to not go forward of the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy. It did go forward. What do you think happens now after the president signs this bill as he's expected to this week?
Well, I think that the question about Don't Ask, Don't Tell there's a broader question. I think that's for the church, and that is that what we see happening is people becoming objectified on the basis of their sexual orientation, and sometimes this is what they themselves are promoting. is to sort of identify oneself completely in terms of in terms of one's sexual orientation, and so that's the broader problem that the church is struggling with.
Sure.
In the particular circumstance of don't ask, don't tell, I mean, we see this as symptomatic of other efforts to do just that across the country.
Now, before we wrap up here, the START Treaty on nuclear arms, the START Treaty with Russia, what's the church's position there? It looks like there might be some movement on that this week, but it's still kind of up in the air.
Yeah, I think that certainly the church has been supportive, and all reasonable people, right? Even those who would be opposed to the START Treaty want to see a reduction in nuclear weapons. I think the big question for some leaders is can Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, be trusted, and the Prime Minister of Russia be trusted, and so there's real opposition to enacting a START treaty with him. But of course, the church's position is we're opposed to the proliferation of nuclear weapons in this country and throughout the world, and so I think that is, again, there's a possibility that legislation may be passed. The real challenge, I think, is that all of this is happening, in the last 20 days of a legislative session. So what I think that we have to all kind of take from this is that you basically have had a landmark election in November, and some very, very important initiatives are being discussed here at the very, very end of this session, as many of these incumbent senators are about to go out of office. And so I'm confident that we'll end up seeing a START treaty. Certainly, former President Bush, 41 and 43, have supported the START treaty. A number of Republican leaders have supported the START treaty. I'm confident that we'll get to a treaty as the church does, but I don't know if it will happen in this session.
Sure. All right. Well, Monsignor Kieran Harrington, thank you so much for your time.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate
Thank
it. Well, stay tuned. When we come back, we'll have the day's headlines. Welcome back to Currents. I'm Matt McClure. Coming up later, some local students bring Christmas glee to Astoria. But first, let's check the day's headlines. Well, the Bishop of Phoenix stripped a hospital of its Catholic status today over a controversial abortion performed there last year. Bishop Thomas Olmsted held a news conference today to announce the decision. He said St. Joseph's Hospital did not uphold the equal dignity of the mother and her baby. Hospital officials, though, say the procedure was necessary to save the mother's life. The decision to take away the hospital's Catholic status means Mass will no longer be celebrated in its chapel, and the hospital can no longer call itself Catholic. The Vatican today further clarified the Pope's recent comments on condom use, saying Benedict did not condone artificial birth control. The Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith says many media outlets have misinterpreted the comments, which came in the Pontiff's book, Light of the World. In it, Benedict said in some cases, such as male prostitutes, condom use could be a positive first step toward greater morality. Today, the Vatican called the idea that the Pope was condoning artificial birth control, quote, in no way justified by his words or in his thought. Well, more secret State Department documents continue to show up on the website WikiLeaks. One of the latest cables points out differences between the Holy See and the U.S. on the issue of population control as a way to combat global warming. State Department officials wrote on November 11, 2009 that the Vatican believes unsustainable lifestyles in developed countries and not population growth worldwide is to blame for climate change. Reports say the U.S. government has long advocated for population control as a means of helping the environment, while the Vatican opposes any such move. Well, population growth is down in the U.S. according to the latest numbers from the Census Bureau. The country's population stands at over 308 million people this year, but it grew at a slower rate over the past 10 years than it did the previous decade. The population is also shifting to the south and the west. That means New York State will lose 2 House seats. New Jersey will lose 1. Now, other new numbers from the government show that the teen birth rate is at an all-time low. The Centers for Disease Control says the rate fell to 39 births per 1,000 girls. That's the lowest rate since the government began tracking those figures back in 1940. The Associated Press reports the economic downturn was a major factor in the decline. Well, a New Jersey congressman is urging President Obama to take steps to help persecuted Christians in Vietnam. Congressman Chris Smith wants the president to sign a resolution designating Vietnam as a country of particular concern. Now, that's a designation given by the U.S. government to countries it sees as guilty of severe violations of religious freedom. Smith says the designation and the penalties that come with it have proven useful against religious persecution in Vietnam in the past. Reports say Vietnamese authorities continue to persecute Christians. One example, earlier this year, government agents clashed with some 500 Catholics in a funeral procession. Well, a 51-year-old man from the Bronx is behind bars today on burglary charges related to a string of church break-ins. Police say they caught Nathaniel Linden red-handed on Sunday at the St. Philip Neri School on Grand Concourse there in the Bronx. Investigators believe Linden could be the man behind as many as 8 burglaries at churches in the Bronx over the last 6 weeks. Well, a new Gallup poll shows most Americans believe God had some role in the creation of the universe, but they're pretty evenly split as to the extent of that role. 78% of respondents believe God had some sort of role in the origin of the universe, but 40% say they believe that God created humans in their present form within the last 10,000 years. Now, the other 38% believe God played a role in human evolution over millions of years. 16% of Americans say they believe there was no divine influence over the origin of the universe. And finally, flash mobs. You've heard of those, right? There's performers randomly break into song in very public places. Usually they attract large crowds, and then the videos inevitably show up on YouTube. Well, they're popping up everywhere during the Christmas season. Here's one example for you. Holiday shoppers at Perimeter Mall in the Atlanta suburb of Dunwoody, Georgia, surprised by this random act of culture over the weekend. Dunwoody United Methodist Church choir members mixed in with the crowd before breaking into Handel's Hallelujah Chorus from the Messiah. The group says it was inspired by a similar performance in Ontario, Canada. Well, see, that performance there went over very smoothly, but things don't always happen that way. In a mall in Northern California, well, it was evacuated after thousands of people turned up for a flash mob performance. A local fire inspector says part of the mall's floor began creaking and moving under the crowd's weight. And in a mall in England, well, they flat out refused to let a Christian group sing the Hallelujah Chorus in its food court. Mall officials say they do not want to be seen as promoting one particular religion. Well, stay tuned. There's much more Currents coming up. Just ahead, one effort to bring the joys of the season to local families.
Every year the tablet asks its readers to donate money so that we can help poor families in the area have a nice Christmas, you know.
Welcome back. Well, it is the first day of winter, which also means it is the shortest day of the year. But if you're looking for a way to make the season brighter for some folks, the Tablet, that's the Brooklyn Diocese newspaper, they're continuing their annual appeal known as Bright Christmas. The other day, the paper's editor, Ed Wilkinson, stopped by to talk about it. Ed Wilkinson, thanks for being here. We appreciate it.
Nice to see you, Matt.
Nice
Always
to see
good
you.
to be with you.
All decked out in the holiday tie and everything with a Christmas snowman and everything. So your Christmas is already looking bright, I can tell. And the Tablet, of course, once again this year trying to make Christmas bright for a lot of families in and around the diocese. Tell me a little bit about Bright Christmas and the Bright Christmas campaign. Give us the refresher course.
Sure. This is an effort that we've been involved in now for over 40 years. Every year the Tablet asks its readers to donate money so that we can help poor families in the area have a nice Christmas, you know. And that's all we want to do. We just want to buy some gifts for kids who maybe would not get a gift this year. And actually, you know, some pastor said that to me the other day. He said, you know, the money that you gave me, he said, I was able to buy some gifts for kids who probably wouldn't have gotten anything this year. And that really touched me. I said, wow. I mean, so that's what it's really all about. It's very simple. We ask our readers for money. They send us money, and then we send it to parishes and to agencies and to people who work with kids in hopes that they will buy some things and make Christmas brighter for those kids.
Yeah, and it's something that's a concept I think a lot of people might have a hard time grasping onto, that these kids really otherwise wouldn't have anything.
Right, it's hard to imagine that. You know, maybe you and I can't imagine that right now, but there are really families who live just on the blocks right where we lived, you know, who aren't going to get anything this Christmas unless we reach out and help them. So it's really a nice thing to do.
Yeah, yeah, and a lot of this, of course, we're doing this as kind of part of a series on alternative giving for the holidays and how you can kind of make you know, a difference in other people's lives instead of just getting, you know, a pair of socks for dad or something like that. You can actually, you know, give a gift that makes a difference in people's lives. And a lot of the things that we've been talking about and discussing have been over, you know, in Haiti, which of course there's a lot of need there. There's a lot of need overseas in a lot of different places. Right. But right here in Brooklyn and Queens, there's a big need as well. And I understand last year you guys actually raised about $125,000.
That's right. And I think we're on pace to do about the same this year. We've had at the same time that we're receiving this money, we're also doing an audit in the office. So things have been a little slow. But I just left the office and they counted over 80,000 so far this year. So we're on a good pace, and it's really, you know, the readers are very generous. And you talk about alternative giving. There's a family who donates every year, and instead of exchanging gifts with each other, they pool the money and they send me a check, and it's usually about $600 or $700. You know, wow. I said, this is great, and I won't say the name, but I mean, one of the people in the family is a priest of the diocese, right. You know, and I get this check every year, and it's heartwarming.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, and it's also a good way, I think, too, to give in memory or in honor of someone else. You can also give a gift that way, I believe.
Absolutely. I got a letter the other day from Oregon, and this lady said she's continued to receive the tablets since she moved out, and she wanted to remember her brother, who was a former coach at Little Flower Parish over in East Flatbush. So, wonderful memorial to him.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if folks want to give, how do they go about doing it?
It's very simple. They just write out a check to the Tablet Bright Christmas Fund and send it to us at 310 Prospect Park West, which is our offices, take care of the tablet, and we'll put it right into the file, and we'll get the money out as quickly as we can. In addition to Christmas, we'll be helping some parishes with the Feast of the Three Kings. You know, with so many Hispanic parishes, they have parties at that time. So whatever we get in after Christmas goes to Three Kings.
Nice. And so that comes up about the first week of January.
That's
there,
right.
And they'll have money. So whatever's left over after the Christmas season is over with.
It just keeps on giving, this gift, you know.
That's right. That's right. So if you see this and you're thinking, oh, you know, maybe I don't have a little bit right now, you can even, you know, give it and say, oh, okay, well, it can go to Three Kings, and that'll be nice.
Yeah.
All right.
And you know, some people send us $1,000, some people send us $100, some people send us $1.
Right.
And whatever they can send, it's so appreciated.
A gift of any size.
Yes.
All right. Well, we'll link up folks to the tablet and, of course, to the information about how they can give over on the website. Ed Wilkinson, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks so much, and Merry Christmas to you, man.
Thanks, you too. Our good friend Ed Wilkinson there. Always nice to have him in studio. You can find out more about how you can give to Bright Christmas by visiting the Tablet's website. It's over on thetablet.org. Stay where you are. There's much more currents ahead. When we return, just like on TV, a glee club gets into the spirit of the season. Well, finally tonight, it is Tuesday, and if you're a Gleek, you know what that means. Another episode of the popular musical show, Glee. But just in time for Christmas, we actually discovered a school glee club right here in our own backyard. It's from Most Precious Blood School in Astoria, and last week we caught one of their holiday performances.
The Glee Club's been going on for a while, 3 years. Some of us, it's from 5th through 8th grade, and we normally practice during lunch and after schools on Tuesdays. And we sing at the church, and we sing in front of our school a lot. It's fun.
It's a good way to show everyone what we have going on in our school, and it's also fun for us to do it too, because I guess we all like singing.
I think it's a glee club because because it has glee and, you're happy. You're happy to be singing and you're in a club,
We're going to sing at the city field. We are invited during the Catholic week. We're going to sing there, and that's what we are preparing for, and they're very excited about it.
I am actually very excited because I am a Mets fan myself. And I actually think that all of us are Mets fans too.
Yeah, go Mets.
Go Mets.
We brought my Glee Club here because we were invited to sing here. We have been actually preparing for this since November. This is the third year that we are singing here.
Every year, a week or two before this event happens, a lot of our clients come in and ask us when the most precious blood children are coming in to sing for them. So they enjoy it a great deal. Astoria Federal is all about putting people first. And what that means to us is being involved in the community, being entrenched with the organizations that are in our community, the local schools.
I'm here at Astoria Federal making a deposit, but I'm also enjoying the lovely singing for Most Precious Blood. It was a nice holiday treat, and I hope that the atmosphere of this could last all year long. The love that's felt here in the room today is very nice. Merry Christmas to all and a Happy New Year.
I coming to see my daughter. She's single today and this performer. That is very good for the community. See the children doing the very good job and enjoy in this time, Christmas time, you know, and it's the best.
It's so cool. Looks like a lot of fun too. And you know, the young Gleeks from Most Precious Blood School in Queens, treating people just, you know, on their everyday errands, making a deposit or doing something at the bank. All of a sudden they have live musical entertainment. Pretty cool. Well, coming up tomorrow, Christmas is a time for family. And we'll show you how some young families in Brooklyn are marking their baby's first Christmas. And we'll tell you how you can help the needy by actually adopting a family. We'll have that and more coming up tomorrow. But in the meantime, remember, we're always online over at currentsny.net. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Until next time, I'm Matt McClure. Thanks so much for joining us. Have a great night.